Do you ever get those moments where you realize that you've been getting in your own way for a really long time? I had one of those in July when I was at the psychology conference that I attended. We were doing this breathing exercise, specifically talking about identifying that very moment in which you get stuck. And it just hit me, just that kind of realization, an inescapable realization actually, because I was surrounded by hundreds of people and I couldn't just run out of that session as much as I wanted to. But just this profound realization that I've been letting my own fears of failure and how I feel about that really stopped me from being the best psychologist and the best coach that I can really be. And that was one of the most impactful moments of July that has really changed so much of what has been happening since. Now, I've always been somebody who was very good at setting goals at the beginning of the year, but then would completely ignore those goals and essentially only really revisit them at the end of the year in December, looking back and feel this consistent feeling of disappointment that I maybe had fallen short of the things that I wanted to do or that I'd set out to accomplish at the beginning of the year. But this year, I made a huge change to my life where I started to actually implement an intentional reflection at the end of each month. I sit down with my thoughts and I consider what's been happening, what have I been thinking, how have I been feeling, and I use that information to plan for the coming month, taking into account what has already been happening to make sure that it doesn't get to the end of the year and I don't look back thinking, oh my gosh, I could have done so much more, and I don't come to the end of the year feeling disappointed because I feel like I've fallen short of the goals that I set out for myself. This reflection really helps me think about the patterns that have been showing up, the behaviors that I've been repeating, any thoughts and reflections that I've been noticing, and it really helps me just consolidate it into one place and use that information to inform how I approach the following month. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I do it, using July as an example so that you can steal my method and do exactly the same thing. Now, my reflective process is actually relatively simple. I ask myself 4 questions every single month that help me get a good sense of what's been going on and help me plan for the coming month. The questions that I ask myself relate to goals that I set myself at the beginning of the year, and that at every monthly reflection point, I go back and I revisit and I think about where I'm at in relation to those goals. The first question that I ask myself is super simple. It's, did I achieve my goals? And if I did, or if I didn't, why was that? Now, this is what helps me actually do a review, look back on the goals that I set myself for the month and think, did I actually do what I set out to do? And sometimes it's really helpful to reconsider, and I might come to the end of the month and think that I've done nothing, and then maybe look back at the goals and go, actually, I did do exactly what I said I was going to do. And other times it helps me almost remember, like, okay, these are my goals. Like, what am I doing? Where did I get in my own way? What was going on for me there? Now, I didn't say this at the beginning, but the goals that I set are always based on my values. So at the beginning of the year, I redid my value sort. You can find the exact thing that I use in the description, and the goals that I set for myself are based on those values. So when it actually comes to that first question, it matters because it helps me revisit my goals, but also revisit my values. And to me, that's super important because being aligned with my values is what helps me live a meaningful and fulfilling life. The second question that I ask myself is, how do I feel about what I have been able to achieve this month? Now, this question is super important because what it actually teaches us is to take a moment to separate the goals themselves and to give us a bit of breathing space to think about, okay, well, how do I feel about that? Because sometimes it can be really easy, especially if you've maybe fallen short of your goals. It can be super easy to become very critical and to think, well, I should have worked harder, like I can't believe I've disappointed myself like that, and all this type of stuff. Whereas in actual fact, when we review what we have and haven't done or haven't achieved, and we take a moment to actually think and consider how we feel about it, it gives us a chance to take things into context, right? To take other factors into account. And the context matters because, as I always say, all behavior makes sense in context. And we cannot strip what we have and haven't done from the context in which we were attempting to, or, unable to do those things that are important to us. So that second question, it leans into the first one, but it helps us actually think about, those feelings and the emotions that come up in relation to it, which again, could prompt further action moving forward, or could maybe change course and help us review those goals and maybe recognize that those goals maybe weren't super appropriate for us in that particular moment. The third thing that I do is I revisit my own life's bullseye. Now, this is an exercise that I adore doing for myself with my clients. Essentially, it's a bullseye, as you can see on the screen. It splits it into 4 different quadrants, each for one different part of your life. And what you get to do is reflect on how close to the way that you would like to be living within that area of your life you are actually showing up, or how close you have shown up, or how far away you've shown up. So for example, for health and well-being, the closer closer you rate yourself to the center of the bullseye, or like to the bullseye itself, then the more you would feel like you have shown up aligned with the type of person that you'd like to be, aligned with your values within this particular valued quadrant of your life. And I do that for each of the 4 designated sections of the bullseye to help me get a sense of how far removed or how close to the life that I want to be living I am actually living for each part of my life. I hope that makes sense. Like I said, I love using this tool with clients, especially because it gives us a sense of being able to find a bit more balance, particularly because the clients that I work with are very all or nothing. So they might find that if in 1 month they've gone, hell for leather in their education or in work, that other things tend to slip up, either like their relationships pull back a little bit, or maybe they're not taking as good care of their health and fitness and stuff like that. So it's a really good way to almost like get a sense of where things are at, do a bit of like a self MOT on your life. And the 4th and final question that I asked myself is, what are 3 bold moves that I can make in the first 10 days of this coming month that are going to make a significant difference moving forward into the new month? And the term bold move refers to a step that you can take that gives that same feeling of when you're on a roller coaster, when it's about to start, going down, you've hopped on the roller coaster, you're super excited, like woohoo, and then it starts climbing up and you start to realize how high you are, and then you're there and it's about to drop and you go, oh my goodness, I think I'm going to die, right? Like that very moment, the moment. A bold move is something that elicits that kind of feeling within you that helps you think, whoa, this is kind of scary, but I'm committed to doing this thing, right? So what are 3 bold moves that I can make in the first 10 days of the month that are going to make a significant difference to move me forward on the areas that I have outlined or that I have now recognized are important to me, or maybe things that I need to work on in this new month? So when it comes to me in this particular month, July has been a very interesting one. It was my birthday. I spent quite a bit of that time in my hometown with my dad. I then went to this conference that was freaking life-changing, and they came back, had some annual leave, proper annual leave for the first time in what feels like a long time of just doing absolutely nothing. And then I've come back to work. So it's been pretty intense. And one of my main reflections from this month is that I've just not been prioritizing my sleep and my recovery enough this year. And it was kind of hard to sit with that recognition because I promote health all the time to my clients. I really value rest and recovery, and I do find moments to rest and to recover in my day-to-day, but I was just cutting my sleep short consistently because I was going to bed at a reasonable time, but because I like reading, I would always find half an hour to read. However, I was procrastinating and just pissing about on my phone, and it was really incredibly frustrating, and that has had to have an impact on other areas of my life where that tiredness was impacting my training quality, it was impacting other markers within my health, it was starting to impact my productivity and actually my ability to focus when I'm doing work that I really value and that is really meaningful to me. And that really got me down. That was incredibly frustrating to recognize, but it's something that's really elicited an important change, and I really have made a shift to not be on my phone in the bedroom at all, other than to set my alarm and to actually get myself into bed at that same reasonable time, read and focus on maybe meditating before I sleep, because otherwise I end up burning out, and I can't be doing that because I adore my job. I don't want to burn out, but I think that the pressures of life and like all the million things that I enjoy juggling, all the different projects that I like being involved in, they do add up. And if I want to be able to do the work that I'm doing, to support my clients, to stop emotional eating, to stop binge eating, to stop ghosting the gym, to stop starting and stopping and stopping and starting all the time, to, add into the psychology community, to add research to, to the published world, to do all these things that are really important to me. Like, I need to be feeling good. I need to be feeling recovered. And that's been one of my biggest takeaways from July, is that I need to prioritize my rest. The second main reflection that I've had from July is what I mentioned earlier, that fear that I have now actually, confronted and recognized, which again is kind of ironic because I know this and I talk to my clients about this stuff all the time. But as someone who deeply cares about her work, and as someone who has struggled with perfectionism and with being very all or nothing and inevitably having a fear of failure, what I've started to recognize is that those patterns are starting to get in the way of my work. So for example, I was reflecting on how I find it difficult to put myself out there, to promote my services, to talk, not necessarily that confidently, but to actually just push myself and stretch myself, particularly in social media and in those types of areas, talking about the things that I'm passionate about with the passion that I have to talk about them. And I was noticing that fear, particularly the fear of failure, or the fear to be seen trying and then potentially failing, was getting in my way. And so I was almost limiting myself, or putting a really low ceiling on myself. That was then just creating this cycle of frustration where I felt like I was putting a lot of work and effort into something and maybe not getting what I was expecting off the back of it. And so this realization in this month, and particularly that, meditation session that I did, or that meditation that was a part of that session that I did at the conference, it just brought me face to face with the need to turn towards the potential shame and, failure, almost like risking failure within my work, within being self-employed. Not that risk and the failure is even fathomably real, if that is even a word, but almost like that the fear feeling was just really getting in the way, and it was meaning that I was procrastinating things, that I was putting things off to the last minute, that really I was then I was becoming frustrated with myself because I wasn't doing the things that I wanted to be doing anyway. I really do know better, but there was just this real block that was coming up for me. And so this month's reflection has helped me really pick up on patterns that I've maybe not been willing to sit with early in the year, and make some significant structural changes to my working days, to my working weeks, to be able to circumvent that and to really start addressing some of those inner fears. And I guess it ties into my reflection of the things that I didn't achieve over the course of July. There was much more rest and recovery that I wish I'd given myself the permission to yield into while I was at my dad's and while I was there, because I feel like I was quite anxious about going to the conference, which meant that I was packing in loads of work. Anyway, it was only when I came onto the other side that I was like, whoa, I really should get better at slowing down, or I need to become more aware of this. So that was one thing. And the other thing that didn't go to plan was that I had these intentions of starting to rework on a course that I'd launched last year and that I ran again this year, called the Anti-Sabotage Club. And every time I sat down to work on it, I noticed this real resistance. There was something that was kind of getting in the way, tied to the fear of failure that had come up, for me throughout this month, and that has been a persistent kind of drip fed something that's been coming up for quite a significant period of time now. And just sitting with that block and not actually being able to advance anything was pretty uncomfortable to sit and recognize that. However, since the conference and since I've actually sat and confronted these fears, I've had a multiple set of epiphanies, which makes me incredibly excited for the month of August, because not only do I have my Wild Hybrid race coming up, which is unbelievably exciting and probably going to be the last competition that I complete this year, which is kind of terrifying to say, but it's also got me excited because I am going to be rebranding and relaunching what used to be the Anti-Sabotage Club, but that is now going to be something completely different in a way, but at the same time not different at all. The content is going to remain very similar, but I'm excited to be able to announce that I am going to be running an 8-week course starting in October. I'm going to be sharing more information as time goes on through my email and through my YouTube channel. So do stay tuned, because you will be the first person to hear about it. And aside from that, August is also very exciting because I'm getting to see my favorite band, Biffy Clyro, on the 21st of August in Edinburgh. So I'm absolutely buzzing about that, in and amongst a million different other things. So anyway, reflecting on the month of July has really helped me come to grips with some very important realizations. And these are the reflective questions that I've been asking myself all year round. It's what's helped me, I think, actually get to this point that I've been able to sit with these realizations. So I hope that you can use my reflective prompts. I hope that you find them useful. Make sure that you screenshot them. Make sure that you check out the links in the description for any other free resources that I do have in there. And as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.